Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and I welcome you to the update on nonviolent actions to break the siege of Gaza. My name is Sami Awad. I am joining you from Bethlehem, Palestine, and serve as co-director of Nonviolence International with our dear friend Michael Beer. To share a little bit about Nonviolence International, we are the backbone organization for the global nonviolent movement. We provide fiscal sponsorship and training, and we spread knowledge and stories of nonviolent movements that give hope to many of us in difficult times. In short, we, with your help and assistance, are shaping what we view as possible for the future of this world. I'm so happy to see so many different faces from around the world who are showing an interest in nonviolence and the Palestinian people and their struggle for liberation. In this webinar today, we want to bring attention to the civil society global movement aiming to break the siege of Gaza during these very difficult and terrible times. Their aim is to bring aid or allow aid to enter Gaza. In it, they're also resisting those who are using starvation as a tactic of war, violating international law and the most basic values of what it means to be human. Today, we want to talk with two activists in this global movement who have put time, effort, and personal risk to end the siege of Gaza and bring aid, facing the continued Israeli system and extreme groups that suppress, attack, manipulate, and try to block these humanitarian efforts. First, I want to first invite my dear friend Ilana Sumka to speak first. Ilana is the founding director of Shlemiyut, which is the Jewish path to wholeness and peace, with nearly 2 decades of experience as a peace and justice activist in Israel-Palestine. She previously served as the Jerusalem director of Encounter from 2006 to 2011, and then founded the Center for Jewish Nonviolence. She is in the process of publishing a memoir about her personal and political journey away from supporting the status quo in Israel to becoming a Palestinian solidarity activist. Ilana's leadership style is grounded in compassionate communication, authentic expression, and embodied awareness. And she is here representing also and speaking on behalf of the group Rabbis Rabbis for Ceasefire in Gaza. Thank you, Ilana, for joining us. You're in Brussels now, I'm guessing.
Right outside of Brussels, yes.
Right outside of Brussels. And it's beautiful because all of us are on so many time zones here. I think we even have somebody from Japan and somebody all the way from Hawaii joining us in different time zones. And it's good to see everybody in between those areas. So Ilana, if you could share with us about some of the work that has been happening, especially recently with your work.
Thank you, Sami, and thank you to Nonviolence International for hosting this. One of my favorite organizations, and it's particularly an honor to be here with you, Sami, as you know, one of my mentors in the work of Israeli-Palestinian civil disobedience and nonviolent activism. So it's quite special to be here with you and with this community. Thank you. I am here wearing the hat in my capacity as a member and leader of Rabbis for Ceasefire. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm 1 year away from my own rabbinic ordination. I'm a rabbinical student. We are comprised of 335 rabbis and rabbinical students who, since October 20th, have released a statement and have been calling for an immediate ceasefire. We're calling for a release of hostages and prisoners and, of course, an end to the Israeli siege and the Israeli manufactured famine that is starving the people of Gaza. And as a soon-to-be rabbi, and since this is a community meeting, I want to invite us to take a moment, actually, a moment of silence and a moment of breath to honor the profound loss, the lives that have been lost in this time. And so before going on, I invite you, whether it's to close your eyes or take a breath, to take a moment in honor of this profound tragic loss. Thank you. Rabbis for Ceasefire has held two primary organizational strategies to confront the horror of this war. One of our strategies is to engage in public actions and civil disobedience. And the other is to convene our Jewish holidays, our Jewish rituals in such a way that lifts up the Jewish prophetic tradition that calls for justice and freedom. And the action that I want to talk about today, the most recent action that we did, combined these two strategies of both engaging in civil disobedience and drawing from Jewish tradition that does call for liberation for all. As many of you probably know, the Jewish holiday of Passover is in the spring, and it was in the fourth week of April this year. And for those of us who feel strongly about both peace and justice and liberation for all, and also feel that the words of our tradition mean something, the Passover holiday is a holiday that celebrates liberation. It celebrates the freedom, our freedom, the ancient Israelite freedom from slavery in Egypt. And it's also a holiday when we invite all who are hungry to come and eat. And so for those of us in Rabbis and Ceasefire, we did not feel that we could celebrate the holiday of Passover, a holiday of liberation, a holiday in which we say, let all who are hungry come and eat, while the Israeli government is starving the people of Gaza, without speaking out. And so we organized an action, a humanitarian delegation to bring food aid to Gaza. We understood that there was a very, very slim chance of actually being able to bring this food aid to Gaza, but we felt that we needed to try, and we're in coordination with the UN offices in Gaza around how we could deliver food aid to them. And we were engaging intentionally in a public awareness raising action to show that even a group of rabbis who are coming with flour and rice to the Erez crossing were not going to be allowed in, which is exactly what happened. So on Friday, April 26th, which was the fourth day of Passover this year, about 36 rabbis, a combination of Americans and Israelis, came with a truckload of rice and flour to the Erez crossing. We were told that we could not continue, and those people in the group who were prepared to take an arrest did their best to continue, and many of them were arrested. If we want to get into it and question and answer about some of the specific tactics and details, I was not actually on the arrestable team. I was on jail support. I was there to provide support to the people who were prepared to be arrested, but I was arrested anyway. These things are not always under your control when you're engaged in this kind of civil disobedience. And so I spent 10 hours, sorry, not 10 days. I have something else on my mind about 10 days, which I'll say in a moment. I spent 10 hours in the Ashkelon police station with Rabbi Alyssa Wise and with author Ayelet Waldman. And part of what struck me was, to be totally honest, how scared I was, even though I'm a person of profound privilege in the state of Israel. I'm white, I'm Jewish, I'm Ashkenazi. And it was still shook me to my core to be arrested in this scenario. And that experience gives me just a fraction of an understanding, having just read the New York Times headline article today about the thousands of Palestinians who are being detained in Israel right now, handcuffed, blindfolded, stripped down, the sheer horror and trauma that people are being subjected to, whether they're in prisons, whether they're imprisoned in Gaza or imprisoned inside Israel. The the last thing I'll say, I'm just mindful of the time here, and then I'll be really happy to answer questions later. There is a point where, and I think as many people here know, as practitioners of civil disobedience, when the rule of law has become so unfathomably unjust, and there are no democratic measures, there are no participatory measures to rectify these unjust laws, then we have to take to the streets and we have to use our bodies to protest and make evident the profound injustice. And I'll close by sharing just one of the most mind-boggling, except of course there's horror upon horror, so the horrors are unending, things that was said to me at the end of the time period in which I was arrested, and I had to sign some papers agreeing to and admitting that I had broken Israeli laws. They weren't just things like disrupting the peace and resisting, avoiding as police orders. One of the top law that I had broken was that I had attempted to bring rice and flour into Gaza. And I had to sign a statement agreeing, yes, I have broken the law, that somehow bringing food into Gaza is breaking the law right now. That's just how, as I'm sure people here know, that's just how kind of obscene the circumstances have become. So I'll conclude with that. Thank you again for having me.
Well, Ilana, thank you for this. I know we were supposed to meet while you were here. We couldn't do that because you were detained. But really appreciate this. And this last point that you said is very, very important, where it is a legal now issue within the state of Israel to bring food into Gaza that is seen as anybody who is violating this is illegal. That just reinforces what we all know, is that there is an intentional siege and starvation measure on the people of Gaza. So thank you for sharing, and I look forward to opening. I'm sure many of our participants have questions for you at the end. And now I want to move to our dear friend Ann Wright, Mary Ann Wright, as many of you know and have witnessed her and her activism for many years, is a retired U.S. Army colonel and retired U.S. State Department official, known for her outspoken opposition to the Iraq War and well-known globally as a peace activist. She's a member of Veterans for Peace. She's a member of Code Pink, and is in the leadership team of the Freedom Flotilla Coalition. Before we opened the room for everybody, she was showing us actually her last bruise, her last injury from being arrested. And her numbers of arrests have gone beyond count. And we thank you, we appreciate you, we love you, we welcome you to this space, and just invite you to share also about the Freedom Flotilla and what is the latest news that has happened. We know that it's been blocked, but where are you and the group moving into in terms of the activism at this point?
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with everyone today, and we thank Nonviolence International for being a physical sponsor of so many of our organizations that do a lot of work to challenge the Israeli genocide of Gaza. And the Gaza Freedom Flotilla is one that you all have been so kind to be our physical sponsor for well over 10 years. And we thank you because we know it's filled with bureaucratic and legal challenges, because and particularly right now, because there are a lot of Zionist organizations that are putting in lawsuits against any organization that speaks about Palestine and that is challenging the Israeli narrative about what's going on with the genocide of Gaza. You mentioned my arm. Well, this was the product of yet one more arrest in the mean, evil, vile U.S. Congress, where we've been every single day we go. In fact, after this webinar, I'll be heading back to Congress and probably see Michael Beer up there. And as we confront our members of the U.S. Congress who are up to their eyeballs in the complicity of the genocide of the people of Gaza and what's going on in the West Bank. So we do challenge them in the hallways, and we challenge them in the hearings, and it's the least we can do. And sometimes it's the only time we ever get to see these members of Congress that are voting the billions of dollars for Israeli weapons, to allow those weapons. This particular thing came when Secretary of State Tony Blinken was testifying in Congress, and he's testified 4 times in 2 days, and we were able to have people in each one of the hearings. And it is remarkable that still we are able to get into the houses of Congress, and that we as citizens, we don't even have to show an ID card to get in, as long as you're not carrying a gun. And that's probably going to change with this stupid Congress. I mean, you probably can bring them in. But anyway, you can get in and you can go to the congressional hearings. So that's what we do. And to talk directly to the leaders of whatever administration's in power. So with that, I will go on to what I was asked to talk about, which is the Gaza Flotilla. And it truly is one of the citizen initiatives to challenge the Israeli blockade of Gaza. And we've been doing this since 2008. It started with the Free Gaza movement in 2008 that was able to get 5 small little boats that had traveled from Cyprus to actually go into Gaza. And it was the first time in 40 years that international ships had gone into the tiny little port of Gaza. But at the end of 2008, that's when the Israeli attack on Gaza called Cast Lead began. And the boats that came from Cyprus after that were all stopped. And one of them was rammed so severely by Israeli commando boat that it almost sunk, and fortunately was able to get back to a port in Lebanon. But after 2008, all of the ships that we've sent, 35 ships, have been stopped by the Israeli commandos. And if you remember 14 years ago in 2010, that was when the Israeli commandos started shooting from helicopters and from Zodiac boats above and beside the Mavi Marmara, and killed 10 people, executed them, really. Executed 10 people, wounded 50 more. I was on one of the small boats that was on the side of the Mavi Marmara and witnessed the helicopters coming in, the commando boats coming in. And then after they had taken control of the Mavi Marmara, they started sending the commandos to all the rest of the boats. And so our boat, called Challenger 1, was also boarded, people beaten up, and then we were taken against our will to a place we didn't want to go, Israel, arrested, put in prison, and ultimately deported from Israel for a 10-year deportation. Our boats were confiscated or stolen by the Israeli government. Since then, we have had boats that have gone in 2011, even though we had 10 boats in Greece, and the Greek government got paid off by the Israeli government not to let most of those boats leave from Piraeus, from the mainland of Greece. But we did later in 2011 have 2 boats that were able to challenge that blockade. They were, of course, stopped. We had boats in 2013, 15, 16 was the women's boat to Gaza. We had ships in 2018. And now what we're doing right now, and let me see if I can show you, I'll see if I can get my, let's see, we'll show you some of the ships that are sailing right now. Now let's see if I can, well, you can see that one right there. I don't,
see it.
Okay, this one is the Handla, which is a small ship that has come from Norway and has stopped in Norway, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, and now it's on the way to Cork, Ireland. And it has a crew and participant capacity of about 20 people. It's a small boat, but it brings in each one of the ports that it goes into. We have activities in the community that are sponsored by the local community, the Palestine Solidarity Group. I'll just go back up through some of these things so you can see it. That it's really quite a wonderful vehicle for solidarity with groups that every single day are trying to do something in their home community, and this thing of a ship arriving gives them one more aspect of solidarity that they can use in their own things. And this one's up in Bergen, Norway. And I'll show you where it wintered over. This is the second year we've used this ship. It was it was way up north in Norway over the winter. You can see how it was. But anyway, it's now on its way. It will be in Cork, Ireland, over the weekend, and then we'll go down into France, around the Iberian Peninsula. Then it will go into the Mediterranean, and we'll be stopping at various ports in the Mediterranean in Spain, France, Italy. And then we'll be heading toward Gaza toward the first part of August. So that is a boat that is on its way. And we have passengers, participants on board. We change out the participants on each leg so that people from around the world can be on this little boat. So we will have people coming in from Malaysia, from South Africa, from New Zealand, from Australia, to be a part of at least one leg of this journey. The other flotilla that we have is called the Break the Siege Flotilla, and this was a flotilla that we started talking about in November after the siege of, well, the Israeli, the beginning of the genocide of Gaza in October. We started talking about, well, we need to try to send some boats earlier than what the Hondola was going to be able to get there in the middle of this summer. So our colleagues over in Turkey with IHH, a huge international humanitarian organization, they put out the word to their donors in Turkey. They have 80 offices all over Turkey, and do fundraising for earthquakes, for all sorts of projects they have all over the world. 4 million Turks contributed so that we could purchase 3 ships. And 2 of them you see in this photograph, a large cargo ship that will have 5,500 tons of non-perishable goods on board. And then the smaller boat over to the right is the passenger ship. And it's actually not a small ship. It could hold 1,400 people if we wanted to put that many on, but we're not. We'll probably have several hundred that will be on it. It's a converted roll-on, roll-off ferry boat that came out of Albania. And it's a big ship. A third ship is a smaller passenger ship. As you mentioned, we've been stalled. We had over 150 international participants who arrived in Istanbul, ready to go on this flotilla in late April. Unfortunately, just the day before we were putting people on the boats to get moving, the country of Guinea-Bissau, which flags 2 of the 3 ships, notified us that they were withholding or withdrawing the flags. And they didn't say it was at the behest of the Israeli government, but we know that's what it was, and the U.S. government too. So we are now in the process of reflagging all of the 3 ships, because the third ship was actually flagged by the tiny little country out in the Western Pacific, Palau, which is one of the partners of the United States in the Compact for Free Association. So the Palau is actually, beholding to the United States for everything. So we wanted to get rid of that flag as well as the flag of Guinea-Bissau. It turns out it's not an overnight process to get these flags. So we have a team of lawyers that has been working with several countries to see which one of them will certify the flags the fastest. And then the other part of it is that finding a place that will let us sail from their shores on this mission. As I mentioned earlier, Greece refuses to let us sail boats from there from 2011. Cyprus won't let us sail from there. Turkey has not been forward-leaning in this, saying that they already have a lot of sanctions against Israel, and the flotilla leaving from Turkey would be one step too far. I mean, that's my interpretation of it. You know, NATO, Turkey is a member of NATO, and the U.S. controls NATO. So there's lots of pressure that's on Turkey. So you have to give the Turks the credit they deserve for having essentially an economic blockade on Israel right now for the genocide that they're doing. As soon as we get the flagging issue done and the port issue resolved, then we will be notifying probably now at least 120 U.S. citizens who are now vetted to go on the ship. And then we have 10 national campaigns, and each one of them will have anywhere from 10 to 30 to 40 people. So we'll have a good number of people that are willing to get on these boats and challenge Israel and the United States on the continuing naval blockade of Gaza. And we certainly
I remember the last time we talked, even in the Zoom call, when we were talking about the flotilla, people were ready to sign on just by listening to you. So I'm sure many people here would be interested in signing on to the next one or to any future flotilla that will head towards Gaza to break the siege.
Wonderful. Well, we welcome all of the citizen activism, because this is our nonviolent way of confronting violence. And it will not be, I mean, we acknowledge this will not be an easy task at all. And we warn people that, of the history of the violence that Israel has done on the flotilla. But it's something we can do. And I think we're also frustrated, impatient, because the impunity that Israel has, and particularly for us as U.S. citizens, where our own government has been just so complicit in the genocide that it just boggles our minds. So with that, I'll stop and thank you all very much for your interest in the Gaza flotilla.
Thank you so much for your talk, for your presentation, for the energy that you bring, your activism. Truly appreciate it. And you leave Turkey and straight to Congress and protesting there. So you're nonstop. Thank you. I wanted to share that we had also a third person that was going to speak with us. He couldn't make it so far. Alon Lee Green, the national coordinator of Standing Together. He has been, and his group has been very, very active also in trying to break the siege and to allow aid to Gaza. Yesterday, they were very active in Jerusalem for Flag Day, and they were attacked. Several people from that group were attacked by very extreme settlers last night. And so, he couldn't make it today. We are going to now open up for our community to share. I think my uncle Mubarak was able to finally make it. So he was supposed to open this hour for us. I want to see if Mubarak, if you are there, you have something to add, to share with the community.
And I hope everybody can hear me.
We hear you very well. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm sorry I wasn't able to make it, and it wasn't the Israeli. We had tornado over in Maryland, Maryland, and we had no electricity, and suddenly we were able to get electricity and Wi-Fi and everything. I just want to be very, very, very thankful for everybody who attend this. It is an important nonviolent action that is mostly from all around the world. And this by itself, it shows that we as a human being, we can resist anybody in guns, and we are willing to put our life toward that. Ending the siege of Gaza is an important thing because even now, with more than 36,000 people are dead in Gaza, we don't know the future of Gaza. And if we still will allow the occupation of Gaza being the same as before, it doesn't work. Israelis are not making friends of the Palestinian. They are not making friends of Gaza. And I will tell you very clearly, in that time, when my father was killed by Israelis, by Jews at that time, till now, I'm 80 years old, there is still something in me saying, what's wrong with those people? Why they continue killing? Why they continue destroying? Why they don't listen to international laws? And how we could help the Israeli people and the Israeli government to challenge them. And this way, what we are doing here is a challenge for everybody. And the international community is breaking the siege of Gaza. Please notice that we are not one country. We are all spread all over the world with different organizations, with different peace groups, with human rights organizations, and participating of people who are supporting the Palestinians to end the siege. But this ending the siege means hopefully that it will end the occupation of Palestine. I also want to thank so much Anne Wright for her continuous strength and dedication and her challenge to the Israelis, and also the connection of international community around this part of her activities, that we are proud to sponsor her and to be with her in every step of the way. The thing what we are doing is showing the world that nonviolence works. And we have to think of different ideas of nonviolent. And this idea of the siege is so much important that we wanted, even if it's not succeeding, reaching the shores of Gaza, we are still feeling that we connect so many groups together with the full idea that we are supporting Gaza and the Gaza people there. And the people in Gaza, they know what we are doing. We tell them, we inform them, and that will give them more spirit, even with the worst situation they ever have, or any human being have, that they said, thanks to all of you who help us in this project.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Mubarak. Thank you for your words. Okay, everybody. So now we will move into our Q&A part of the gathering. We encourage you to ask your questions out loud so everyone can hear them. To ask a question, please raise your hand by clicking the reactions button in the bar at the bottom of the Zoom window, then click raise hand. When it's your turn to ask your question, I will invite you to unmute and pass it off to you. If you cannot come off mute to ask your question, please share in the chat and I will add you to the queue. We are a large gathering, so let us try to keep our questions small and direct, not too much commentary, and definitely not any lecturing at this time. I know many of us have very amazing ideas and opinions, and we will continue to create spaces for that. So all of this so that we could really allow for as many questions as possible. We truly value your voice and will aim to center marginalized voices during the Q&A. So raising your hand before someone else does not necessarily mean you will ask your question before them. We really want to give space for everybody to be able to share. So, yeah, please, those who have questions, raise your hands. And these are for Ilana and for Wright. And so we'll start with Hind.
Yes, good morning from the US here. I'm in Illinois, Peoria, Illinois. And my question is that we are seeing a shift in the general understanding, at least as a grassroots level. People, we see more sympathizers with the Palestinian cause. Have you seen any shift on the ground or in the Israeli government or the Israeli behavior that we have not seen? Is there any underlying currents that you see that can indicate a shift?
And who are you asking this for? Ilana, maybe you want to?
Yeah, probably Ilana, because she's on the ground there. Yes.
Well, thank you for your question. I should clarify, I'm not Israeli, and I don't live in Israel, although I did live in Jerusalem for 7 years. But I appreciate the question, and I can answer it anecdotally from an Israeli solidarity, Palestinian solidarity activist who I just spoke with. There are unprecedented numbers of Israelis coming out against the war. Now, it's hard to say how much of that is around a call to release hostages, which I think is a worthy, is an important and understandable call. And there's a deepening in the understanding that a release of hostages is most likely to come with a ceasefire. I don't think any changes are happening in the Israeli government. There's nothing I've seen that indicates a change in the government, but hopefully there is something growing among a more grassroots Israeli population.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ilana. Thank you for the question, Hind. I also want to encourage and invite younger people who are joining for the first time, to also take the courage and ask questions. I know we have some of our new interns at Nonviolence International joining us. So this could also be a test of your internship to also present yourself and your voice in this space. And so, yeah, we'll go to David now with your question.
Thank you. I don't know if it's more than one David, but thank you so much for your work here. I am curious. I get frustrated and too patient with the legislators and things like that, communicating things. But are you seeing direct action having any impact, and how would you encourage people to get more involved with direct action locally, or joining you in Washington? Do you need more help, or all those things?
Well, I'll take that one if you don't mind. Yeah, we do always need more help in Washington. We usually have about 10 people, but it could go up to 30 or 40, depending on which day and who can get off work or who's traveled in from different parts of the United States. And we divide the groups up so that we can go to as many congressional offices as possible. And we're taking materials that are based on what the latest outrage the Congress has come up with, whether it's, let's go ahead and invite the genocide prime minister of Israel to come to do a joint session of Congress. So, that's one that we're taking around. Also, congressional committees that are essentially calling pro-Palestinian or people that are challenging the Israeli genocide as members of Hamas, of being anti-Semitic, being un-American. I mean, there's a whole list of things that they've put in letters to, like, the Treasury Department to say, we want a copy of every suspicious activity report that you, the Department of Treasury, have on 20 different organizations. So we took that to those members of Congress that signed that. We also were able to ask the Secretary of Treasury herself. She was testifying in the Congress earlier this week, and as she was walking out, we were able, and she stopped to let us ask a question about what's going on? Do we look like terrorists? I mean, all we are doing is trying to challenge a genocide. And Secretary Yellen stopped and kind of looked and said, I don't think you're terrorists. Please, and turned to one of her aides and said, would you get more information about this? So I've already written an email to the acting Assistant Secretary of the Treasury for Legislative Affairs to make sure that they know about this letter and that they need to be honest in any sort of response to it. But every day, there's just some more outrageous thing that some congressperson has cooked up. So we have plenty of materials to keep going through the Congress day after day after day. And some of the confrontations that we have, and they are confrontations, when you stop them in the hallway and ask them, why are you supporting a genocide? And they just come back to this whole thing of it's all self-defense, which we know is not right. I mean, self-defense may be on day one, but here we are almost 10 months into this and 35,000 Palestinians killed. This is not self-defense, and trying to make sure that they understand that we know what they're doing, which they are usually getting money from AIPAC and other Israeli organizations to run their campaigns. And so that's another thing that we take to their offices and make sure their interns know about it. Right now the Congress is flooded with the new summer interns that have come in from all over the country. And it is really interesting now to go into those offices with these young kids that have just maybe have 1 year of college. They're rip roaring ready to go, and they've been watching social media. They know what's going on, and we're getting a much better reception from them than we had with the old jaded receptionists that have been sitting there and hearing the mess that their congressman spouts off. So yes, please come. We appreciate it. And if you can't get to Washington, please go to the local offices of your representatives, particularly in July, because that's when they're off from Washington. They'll be back at home. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And in addition to direct activism and action, we want to also encourage you to financially support these two amazing organizations. As you see in the chat, there is a link to the Freedom Flotilla and to Rabbis for a Ceasefire. And your financial contributions and donation go a very, very long way with these organizations. So thank you. Kathleen Temple.
Thank you so much for the chance to ask a question here. And my question could go to Ilana or Anne or any of you. I'm a member of Mennonite Action. It's a relatively new organization and it's affiliated with you all. Thank you. But I organize a group of people, about 200 people around the world, who like to receive little scripts that give them ideas of what to say to their legislators. So, and most of the people I write for, and I send out a new little script every day, most of the people I write for are in the US. But even people who aren't in the US really want to contact not just their legislators, but they want to contact the Biden administration. Oh, they want to contact Jill Biden. They want to contact Joe Biden. They want to appeal to Biden to do everything differently. Is this a waste of time? That's my question.
I am happy to share briefly, and then I'll hand it over back to Anne. I'm so glad you asked that, because it's not a coincidence that Biden, although it is far too little and far too late, Biden is at least finally saying that it's time to end this war. He has an election coming up. He knows that he's vulnerable. And the only reason that he's even saying that it's time to end this war, that he's made that inching along progress, is because he's hearing from constituents, because we have been out in the streets, whether or out on boats or out at the Erez checkpoint, making it into the newspaper to show that the majority of the people want this war to end. And so I think it's absolutely critical. And I absolutely believe that it has an impact, because imagine we had not been doing this, then there would be no incentive for Biden to even be making the progress that he's making. So we need more of it. And I thank you for the effort you're making to communicate with your people, Kathleen, to continue to encourage them.
And if I could just add to that, of sending scripts out to kind of give people an idea of what topics to bring up. Code Pink has really been good over the last, for decades, but they have what's called the Code Pink Congress. And it's bringing topics for an hour-long conversation. And at the end of it is having a script where while everybody's on the webinar, you pick up your phone and call your representative using that script on a variety of topics. So I'll put the link into that, and you can kind of scroll through all of that and find some topics that you like and use those scripts, because they're already done and they're really great. Thank you.
Oh,
Wonderful.
thank you. And I participate with that. I also participate with Code Pink's phone banking. We call 10 people a week, 10 different Congress people a week with that. Danica sets that up. So if somebody has the link for that, that'd be great to have in the chat too.
Thank you for that. So we have 3 questions, and I still want to keep time also for Mil Duncan, our dear friend, to share at the end. So I'm going to jump to Jamie. Jamie, welcome. What's your question or comment? Jamie is our new intern joining us at Nonviolence International.
Hi, everyone. My name's Jamie. I am one of the newest interns. I'm based in Virginia. I go to school in Northern Virginia, so I'm a lot closer to DC, but currently I'm home in a small town called Colonial Beach in Virginia. My question is for Ilana, and I think from my understanding about your introduction, you previously maybe believed more in supporting the Israeli government cause, and forgive me if I'm wrong. So I'm not Jewish. I was raised Baptist, and I have a lot of experience in the evangelical community. And as we know, at least in the United States, one of the biggest proponents of Zionism is the Christian evangelical conservative church. And I was just wondering, what's your experience with kind of changing your mind, or have you engaged with your community to, how do you approach those conversations? I know it's different when it's Jewish versus evangelical Christianity, but how do you go about engaging in those conversations? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that, Jamie. Sami Awad is the first and primary answer to that question. When I was living in Jerusalem, I went to Bethlehem for the first time and discovered that an entire people who I had been raised to fear as terrorists were actually human beings living behind a wall that had been erected supposedly for my safety, but actually to oppress the Palestinian people. So what I think what you might have remembered hearing in the introduction is that I was raised to support the status quo in Israel, which is exactly how I was raised and how millions of Jewish Americans are raised and how millions of Christian Americans, even more Christian Americans, as you pointed out. And I think that the work of going into our own communities to open hearts and minds to help them understand that the education that we were raised with was at best full of partial truths and at worst full of lies. But I don't recommend saying that directly to people who don't know that yet. It's not the best opening foot. The way that I have found has been most effective is sharing personal stories and experiences and explaining how it shattered me. And maybe this is beyond the scope of this webinar, but it shattered me to discover what the state of Israel was doing and what it was doing in the name of Jews. And it shattered me to feel and realize that I had been lied to for my entire Jewish education and upbringing. And so it's important to help people go through that process where I think there is a shattering that needs to happen. But there's also what I think is also important to remember is that it's not just a shattering, it's a reconstituting, because there's something better waiting for us that is a deep love of the shared humanity of all of us, all of God's creatures. If you're a faith-based person, that language works. If it's not, we can talk from a more secular place about humanistic universal love. But that is what was waiting for me on the other side of the shattering that I went through. And so I bless you in going through that process in your own community and helping people make that transition.
Well, thank you. Thank you for these words, Ilana. Deeply appreciated. Robert, our young participant, you have a question? We're going to take Robert.
Thank you.
And Diane. That'll be completed for the Q&A part. And then we'll have Mil Duncan join us. Yes, please, Robert.
Two things. I'm here in Chicago, and I want to lift up August 11th is the beginning of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago. And President Biden and all the congressional Democrats will be here, as well as a ton of national and international media. So I ask everyone to mark your calendars for August 11th. Do whatever you can to come to Chicago for all of the protest and peace witness that's going to happen, including, I hope, some kind of flotilla, as we discussed in the chat. And I urge you all to raise your voices in support of that. But also anything else that we can do to raise the profile of peace witness and protest around what's happening in Gaza on August 11 and pushing Democrats to cut off military aid to Israel. And if you can't come to Chicago, do whatever you can where you are to raise the profile of protests, particularly targeted here, because this is where President Biden is going to be. This is where congressional Democrats are going to be. And these are the key enablers of the blockade. And we face a kind of blockade here in the political system, as we all know. The second thing I want to raise is the push for a Gaza War Powers resolution. Some of you are engaged in this already and know that in the case of Yemen, we used the War Powers resolution of 1973 to force votes in Congress. We're trying to do that now. We're trying to find a sponsor who will introduce a Gaza War Powers resolution to force votes on cutting off U.S. participation. This is key in terms of accountability and also for, there's this game, as you all know, of saying the Israelis are doing this. Oh, we're powerless. Oh, we're trying. We're for ceasefire, even though we know that the U.S. government, this is really a U.S. war, as the war in Yemen was. And if the U.S. stops, the war stops. So putting the question on the table as putting the U.S. role front and center is a key thing that we achieve if we can get a Gaza War Powers resolution introduced and voted on. And we know that from the press, it's not just the weapons. The U.S. this Wall Street Journal, CNN, U.S. is providing intelligence that the Israeli military is using for targeting that triggers Section 8C of the War Powers Resolution. That's direct participation. So please engage, particularly with the 58 members of Congress who voted against the supplemental. Please help us push on those members to take the next step and introduce a Gaza War Powers Resolution.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert, for this. So all on Chicago. That's where we need to go. Thank you. Diane?
Yes, hi, and thank you for this. There is another nonviolent approach, which I represent. It's the International Peace Coalition, founded by Helga Zepp-LaRouche. This has we've been fighting for something called the Oasis Plan, and which involves a cooperative development of the Middle East around water projects, which of course there's much too much sand and not enough green. So I wondered if either of the Awad brothers or maybe it's father and son. Yeah, father and son. Could
You and uncle.
I'm sorry.
That's right. It's all in the family. Thank you.
Yeah, all in the family. We all are in the family.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm of Jewish extraction myself. But anyway, I wondered if either of you could speak to that, or maybe Ann Wright, or anyone who actually is familiar with this Oasis plan. Otherwise, I can put it somewhere in the chat or wherever, so you could be connected to it.
Yeah, I want to invite you to put it in the chat for us to look at, and then maybe we could create a whole webinar just on this issue. It's a very important issue, and it's a big discussion. And so thank you for putting it in the chat for people to see, and then we'll definitely see what we could do about it.
Can anyone respond now that is familiar with it already?
Mubarak, you want to say something?
Yes, I have been speaking with the group, and we are trying to work our effort to bring it to knowledge of everyone.
Perfect.
I also have one things to say to everybody who participated. If they have something on their mind or a project on their mind, and they are hesitant or they don't know how to implement it, I want you to call Michael Beer or Sami Awad, and we could help you implement that. We need more projects that work with, and we have the experience, we have the know-how. Don't feel ashamed. It doesn't matter how big the project is, how small the project. We could do our best.
Thank you. Thank you, Mubarak. Thank you, Diane. Mil, are you around?
Yeah, I'm here, Sam.
Here you are, my friend. Thank you. Thank you, Mil. So I just want to quickly welcome Mil. Mil, many of you know very well, a pillar in the global nonviolent movement. And Mil and many of us have been working on a project for unarmed civilian protection. And I invited him because of the theme of where we are today to share a little bit about this, and invite you to also join in this movement. So Mel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sami. And I do want to thank everyone who's here and for all of the contributions that I know many of you, and that you continue to make, and the energy and spirit that we combine. As Sami said, I wanted you to join in the invitation. We are recruiting veteran unarmed civilian protectors to go to the West Bank and to Gaza to provide direct protection for civilians who are caught up in the violence, and to work with local people in building their own safety and self-protection. I was one of the co-founders of Nonviolent Peace Force that has been around now for a little over 20 years. And we are one of over 60 civil society organizations in the world today that are practicing a form of strategic nonviolence that's different than civil disobedience. It's active strategic nonviolence that's focused on direct protection of civilians caught up in violence and prevention of further violence. So there's over 60 organizations working in 30 areas of the world. There are now hundreds of us who have experience working directly in violent conflict, working with violent governments, whether they be the Duterte government in the Philippines, whether it be the former governments in Colombia, whether it be the Minneapolis Police Department, and working with violent non-state actors, whether it be the Tamil Tigers or the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, there are hundreds of us with this experience. We are calling people together now for training and for deployment to work directly with the organizations that are already there. In addition to the ones that have been mentioned today, Standing Together, the Humanitarian Guard, the Center for Jewish Nonviolence, there are another 10 or so organizations working on the West Bank doing direct protection. They're somewhat small, but they are doing important work every day. We can bolster that work and also push into Gaza to provide the protection that's necessary instead of the armed peacekeeping that is now being called for. The type of work that is being called for can be done better by nonviolent peacekeepers than armed peacekeepers. For example, what's being called for are the things that we've been doing for decades: protecting the safe and efficient provision of humanitarian aid, accompanying people under threat, interpositioning ourselves between conflicting parties, ceasefire monitoring and reporting on international and humanitarian law, and providing direct protection to civilians, as well as supporting community-based self-protection. These are the kinds of things that we can be done. We are about to send an assessment team to work with our partners on the ground. To support this, you can contribute directly to Nonviolence International, who we're very fortunate to be partnering with on this. And this is something that we can do now, and I invite all of you to join us. Contact information is in the chat, so thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mel. Thank you. And just want to share my deepest appreciation to all of the work that is happening in solidarity with the Palestinian community, in solidarity with peace and justice, in solidarity for creating a new world and moving out of this paradigm of violence into a paradigm of peace. So thank you, Mel. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Yeah, and really, I just want to end by thanking everybody for joining us today, for your deep commitment to nonviolence and to peace work. We definitely need all of you in this work with us to build the future that we are dreaming of. And so we ask you again to consider supporting the different organizations that you heard of today. As I said from the beginning, we are a community. We come together as a community. This is not just speakers and listeners. Each one of you is doing their part in activism. And so continue to support each other, strengthen each other, and connect with each other. I just want to also share that there will be a recording of this webinar that will be posted on our YouTube channel, and you could follow us there, including following us on our X account and our Facebook account. And the webinars of Nonviolence International will continue. We will be talking more and more about engagement in nonviolence actions that are happening in the West Bank. We will also, in the near future, be hosting a conversation with Jonathan Kutab, and to continue to unravel together his ideas regarding his book, Beyond the Two-State Solution. So all of these are very, very important invitations for you to join and to be part of. And I want to end by asking everybody to unmute themselves, if possible. And just for all of us to say together in your language, peace be with you, in whatever language you have and multiple languages that you have.
Peace be with you. Peace be with you.
Peace be with you.
Peace be with you.
Peace be with you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Shalom alaikum.
Shalom alaikum.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Lots of love to all of you. Thank you for joining us, and continue the work we do. We are building this together. We're creating this together. Thank you. Bless you.
Thank you, Sami.
Thank you, Sami.
Thank you, Sami. Thank you.